Hey everyone! The reason I haven't posted a video lately is because I like to keep you guys up to date about things that are happening, and as of my last update video, not too much has happened. And I also want you to know that I'm watching current events and I want to keep you guys updated on those instead of making more informational type videos. The videos I already made were to explain to you who the two beast systems were in Revelation 13 and to show how the popular ideas we've been conditioned to think are true by the cabal and how the Bible is going to play out aren't exactly true. I just wish that everyone out there would read their Bibles for themselves, and I don't mean you guys because I think you're like the only corner of the internet that does, but I mean just people that I meet in everyday life and like just ideas that I see perpetuated on the internet or things like that. For example, I'm sure most of you are aware that John Nelson Darby popularized the idea of a rapture and dispensationalism, neither of which are in the Bible. Darby was a dark occultist who wrote his own version of the Bible that changes and removes scripture in order to fit his occult beliefs. Cyrus Scofield furthered Darby's agenda when he wrote his own reference Bible or commentary in 1909. He was funded by the Oxford University Press, which is funded by the British Cabal. Scofield was also told what to write by the Jewish Zionists. Zionism is a political and secular faction of Judaism and does not have its roots in biblical truth. They are the Ashkenazi Jews originally from Khazaria, and they follow the Babylonian Talmud. They're also called the Jews that are not Jews. These are the people who funded and marketed the Scofield Commentary Bible. Not only did the Zionists fund Scofield, the Rockefellers funded and founded all of the major seminaries in the United States. They spread the lies started by Darby and Scofield through the United States through the training of seminary pastors. The point is that Christianity was taken over by the Dark Cabal in the early 20th century, and people today who still call themselves the Christians who stand with Israel don't realize they're supporting the Cabal or the first beast of Revelation. But honestly, and I'd like to know if some of you guys feel the same way, but I feel like we're in a weird time where so much truth is being uncovered, but people refuse to look into any of it. They desperately hold on to some belief created by a man, or a pastor, or a rabbi, or culture that isn't even in the Bible and actually contradicts it. On the other side, people who don't know their Bible or don't believe in a God are so apathetic to anything happening that they don't even look into current events. And they don't hear about anything that isn't on their mainstream news sources. I feel like it's slowly been getting this way for a few years now, but I feel like it's all changed recently for the worse. Everyone has made up their minds on whatever worldview they're gonna follow, and nothing will ever change their minds. Like, no piece of information, no proof, nothing. This is it, just everybody has their version of truth, and they're happy with that. So that being said, I don't think I'll make any more videos on things like Freemasonry, MKUltra, Christian Zionism, because other people put out good content about those subjects. They're definitely worth researching, but I think for me, I'm just gonna focus on the currency reset from now on. So speaking of which, on January 3rd, 2 new bills were introduced to the House. The first one, H.R. 24, will require a full audit of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Reserve Banks by the Comptroller General of the United States and for other purposes. The second bill, introduced that same day, states that it's intended to promote freedom, fairness, and economic opportunity by repealing the income tax and other taxes, abolishing the IRS, and enacting a national sales tax to be administered primarily by the states. Both of these bills refer to NESARA by abolishing both the income tax and the IRS and creating a flat-rate, non-essential, new items-only tax, revenue for the government, as well as ending the Federal Reserve. It seems that the bill to audit the Fed is probably just a formality, since Q already told us, quote, "We have the gold," and that gold will destroy the Fed. This implies that the new quantum financial reset will be what completely eliminates the cabal's access to their money. Speaking of the quantum financial reset, the National Quantum Initiative Act was unanimously passed by the Senate and presented to President Trump for his signature on December 21st of 2018. I think it's interesting that he signed it on the winter solstice, since it's the shortest day of the year, or the darkest day of the year, and then the light returns. You know, Q always says from dark to light. It's also the day that all occultists celebrate. The National Quantum Initiative Act establishes a federal program to accelerate quantum research and development for the United States' economic and national security. With these three bills, it looks like the United States is almost ready to roll out the Quantum Financial Reset, NSARA, or the Mark of the Beast. Another thing to consider is that countries around the world are dropping the US petrodollar, selling the treasury notes, dumping the US dollar, and building their own alternative payment systems. Europe is creating a way around the SWIFT, which is an international payment transfer system. China, Russia, Germany, and Iran have each announced they're developing alternative money transfer systems as well. This means they're avoiding the cabal banks and systems put in place to wire and transfer funds. Up until a few years ago, the United States would have invaded any country that tried to get around the cabal's banks. But now, countries are being allowed to leave the US dollar. This adds to the systemic, controlled destruction of the Rothschild-owned central banking system. January 7th of 2019, Jim Young Kim, the president of the World Bank, suddenly resigned. The World Bank provides loans to countries. All of these events are part of the transition phase. The whole world seems like it's getting ready to announce a new quantum financial system. I didn't discuss this in an earlier video for the sake of time, and I honestly didn't think it would be that big of a deal. But a very important piece of NSARA goes back to the 1970s, when banks illegally foreclosed on farmers' mortgages all over the United States. Farmers sued the government and won. In the early 1990s, the Supreme Court ordered farmers be paid $6.6 trillion before NSARA can be enacted. The farmers must also be paid in gold or treasury notes, not US Federal Reserve notes. On December 20th of 2018, President Trump tweeted this: "That farm bill may have the orders to pay the farmers as instructed by the Supreme Court ruling." I'm going to switch gears here for a minute and show you guys a holiday commercial from Tiffany released in November. The description of the commercial says, "A whole new world is here right in time for the holidays. Discover a world where joy and wonder come out of the blue." It follows a woman who dreams she falls down the rabbit hole, and when she comes to, notice the halo of enlightenment, she meets this character, holding a white rabbit and wears purple gems. This character introduces her to a new world. Interesting to remember that Saint Germain's color is violet and purple, and in the New Age, he is the Shohan of the seventh ray, which is the violet flame, or the purple one. But did you guys catch it? At 17 seconds in, the woman points to a card with a Q on it. Now they could have chosen any card in the deck, but they chose Q, and chose to draw attention to it, and put it at 17 seconds in, and Q is the 17th letter in the alphabet. Not enough? Well, there are other references to Tiffany lately that have gone off on a whole new theory. Mainly that JFK Jr. is still alive. There's chatter going around that John Jr. may not have died on July 16 of 1999, but instead faked his death to avoid being killed by Hillary in order for her to win the New York Senate seat, and he might be working with Q. Some people think he might be Q. I don't really have an opinion on this either way. I don't know. We don't know. On Trump's inauguration day, Melania presented Michelle Obama with a blue Tiffany box, which Michelle awkwardly accepted, but she looked really uneasy about it. But not quite as uneasy as Jeb Bush when he got that note at George Bush Sr.'s funeral. So, a box, no big deal, right? Unless you know that JFK Jr., his wife, and his sister-in-law were cremated and the remains were placed in a Tiffany blue box before their burial at sea. And interestingly, there were only 17 family members allowed on the naval ship for the scattering of the ashes. And just recently, Michelle was on Jimmy Fallon and mentioned the Tiffany box incident again.
So there was that, the Tiffany box, it was just all, a lot.
Okay, anyway, moving on from John. Do you guys remember the cover of The Economist magazine in 2017? So first, these are all tarot cards. Tarot cards are used primarily for divination purposes or predicting the future. And you guys remember that a prophet predicts the future and a false prophet predicts a false future? And anyone who goes to tarot cards to predict their future obviously has bought the lie. The cards in a deck are divided into major arcana and minor arcana. The cards depicted on this cover are called Trump cards. You guys remember that Trump is with the false prophet system, the second beast, not the first beast, that's the cabal. We're in the false prophet system, false prophet kingdom right now. So this cover has a lot of different cards on it, but the ones I want to show you is the Judgment card. The Judgment is the card of transition from one state to another, a calling you can't ignore or a transformation. But that's just a basic tarot card definition. The message this image is sending is much bigger. Trump, seated on the globe the cabal created, the world that's built up for us, about to exact justice for all the crimes committed by the cabal that they've gotten away with for so many centuries. It's depicting him as like the god of the world, the false world, you know, the Matrix world, because Lucifer can't create anything. He literally had to create his own world. Then this card is the Tower. This card stands for sudden change, upheaval, chaos, revelation, and awakening. On any website about the description of these cards, the Tower is described as a solid structure, but because it's built on shaky foundations, it only takes one bolt of lightning to bring it down. The protocols of the Illuminated Sons of the Golden Dawn talk a lot about the light, and in Protocol 3.4 it says, lies take time to be spun and believed, but the truth strikes like lightning. We all know that lightning is a reference to Godrael, or Lucifer. But this card, the Magician, is always depicted as Hermes. And Hermes is the father of Hermeticism. And if you guys remember from my video, the Saint Germain Deception, Hermeticism is a big deal. It's like the biggest deal, as far as occultists are concerned. The card shows all of the new technologies promised by the protocols of the Illuminated Sons of the Golden Dawn and Nasara and Jasara, thanks to the work done by none other than Saint Germain, who is guiding Trump. Anyway. Now, why do I say that Q is with the second beast or the false prophet system? Based on the position of authority they use to write things like God bless and future proves past, and the way they only post scripture from the Bible, not from other religious texts, just the Bible. They portray themselves as, quote, Christians and write in a strictly Christian tone. Q even says that the truth will set you free, but he's not talking about Yahusha, the real truth. Matthew 24 warns of many false prophets who try to deceive even the elect. Those who follow Trump claim to be Christians, yet they're the ones being deceived by this false prophet. Making America great again is just one example of a false future. America was always a Masonic experiment, founded by Saint Germain that got taken over by the cabal, and Saint Germain now wants it back. Some of the people who follow Q and try to decipher the Q clock have come to the conclusion that some Q posts were written a year in advance, based upon the predictive tone of Q drops. Their message of exacting justice has given people a false hope and a false sense of security. Then there's the promise of prosperity and world peace. These are the same talking points given by the light Luciferians or the Illuminati. People spend their days deciphering Q drops, yet how many open their Bibles and try to decipher prophecy? Even worse, because they believe so much in Q, they deny that we're in the tribulation or the end times because we're promised such a fantastic future of freedom and prosperity. Remember when I said Hermeticism was a big deal? For those who don't know, both paths of occult magic are predicated on Hermeticism. The many false Christs and false prophets spoken of in Matthew could be cults like Theosophy, the New Age, Dark and Light Luciferianism, and their countless offshoots that I mentioned in the Saint Germain Deception video. That being said, we're being deceived by Saint Germain or Hermes' teachings once again. And don't get caught up with this wall debacle. This shutdown seems like it has more to do with final negotiations for the New Republic more than a physical wall. Then there's the mainstream news sources promoting the pole shift, a New Age idea of their beginning of ascension. The fact the mainstream media reports on it proves that it's all part of their agenda, to deceive. To the New Age, this shift raises the Schumann resonance, which helps us, quote, ascend. Too bad that idea only works on a cartoon ball, because there is no pole shift on a plane. And here is my opinion based on my own understanding. If we are preparing for the mark to be rolled out nationwide, then worldwide in the form of debt forgiveness and a quantum financial reset spoken of in Revelation 13:18, then the verses that precede the mark, given by the second beast, must be happening as well. Let's take a look. In Revelation 13:12, this second beast causes those to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Do you guys remember during 9/11 how the Pentagon was constantly referred to as the brains of America? Trump uses a song from 2008 called God Bless the USA. And though that song is from 2008, songs like this began to spring up after 9/11 and gave people an unwavering sense of nationalism. America could have fallen on that day when the cabal blew up the buildings, but instead, America went to war and continued to destroy countries. Revelation 13:3 says one of its heads, referring to a part of the first beast, or the cabal, was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. In my opinion, this does represent America. The entire world still worships America. A memorial in Columbia, South Carolina refers to the wreckage as the Abyss. Revelation 9:11, yes, Revelation 9:11, refers to an angel of the abyss, Abaddon or Apollyon, meaning the destroyer, possibly the same character as Belial, which is the entire spirit over the Cabal or the first beast. These characters are probably the same. Revelation 9:2 says, "The bottomless pit is open, and the smoke rose out of the pit." A pit is also an abyss. I can make a whole video on this topic, but for the sake of my argument, let's assume that this deadly head wound was 9/11. And if you disagree, I understand, as this is completely my own opinion. So the false prophet causes all to worship the part of the first beast system with the deadly head wound that was healed. Then it is instructed to make an image unto the beast, and the image should both speak. Who is Q? We don't know, but everyone who worships America is certainly behind it. That image has become like a religion. The internet and the media are the only ways this Q movement are even able to exist, because we are all interconnected. What about those who do not worship the image?
It's like 24 hours since John McCain was put to death.
It is also widely believed in the QAnon community that George Herbert Walker Bush was executed due to a plea deal. Right now, there's turmoil in every government worldwide, and the turnover rate is astounding. People are rising up against the cabal, and all cabal members have been made to step down. Think CEOs, elected officials, celebrities, presidents, and more. Anyone who isn't with the second beast or doesn't follow the protocols of Q and the Golden Dawn are being excused from existence. I'm assuming the latest casualty is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but time will tell with that one. Alright, anyway, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will keep you updated as more happens. Take care.